What's up, guys? I have another camera related video today. See, like, half the reason that I make YouTube videos is because I kind of tend to obsess over things and I can't stop thinking about them. And I need to talk about it to kind of get it out of my head for a minute and chill out. And Daisy can really only take so much camera talk. Like, she's interested and she likes it. But at a certain point, she's like, please shut up about cameras for a minute. So here's the thing. Here's what I've been thinking about lately. I want someone to make the perfect everyday carry camera. And I've had a few of these. Well, I guess I should start with what is an everyday carry camera. My definition is a small, compact camera that takes really good photos, maybe videos. It's, I guess your preferences, that you can throw into at least a jacket pocket. Like, it doesn't have to be so small it slips into like your jeans pocket, but like at least a jacket pocket. Like, my Fuji XS20 is fairly small for a mirrorless camera, but once you put a lens on it, like, that ain't going in no pocket. Like, you need a camera bag or something like that. Or you need to, like, if I'm going out to take photos specifically, like, or I'm going somewhere that I know I'm going to want to take a bunch of photos, then I'll carry the Fuji with my choice of lens. That's fine. But I want something that I can have all the time, because a lot of times I see something cool that I want a good picture of, but I don't have a good camera on me. I've had a few of these over the years. Back before smartphones had cameras that you would want to use for anything other than just like utilitarian photos and like take a picture of a note so you don't forget it or whatever. Back in the iPhone 3G days and stuff like that. And prior to the iPhone, because I am old, I had Windows mobile phones, and at any rate, carried a Canon SD400. At the time, especially compared to mobile phone cameras, it was absolutely awesome. It took 5 megapixel photos. This was back in like 2007, 2008, so that was awesome for a digital camera. And it took like pretty good photos, and because I carried that around, I have pictures that I would not have usable pictures of, like, I would not be able to have captured a usable picture at that time and place with the available technology unless I carried a camera. So that was kind of the start of it. And then as phone cameras got to be like at least serviceable, I started carrying better cameras, like something that's closer in quality to something like this, like, a mirrorless camera. So right now, what I carry is the Ricoh GR3. And it's pretty good. It does a lot of things well. It's a very small camera. It definitely meets the pocketable criteria. It has a 28 millimeter full frame equivalent lens. It's f2.8, which is okay, pretty good. And especially because it is an APS-C sensor camera. It has a fixed focal length of 28 millimeters. You don't get any zoom. It has a lens that retracts into the body. And like, it's overall very good. They've got some pretty good film simulations on it, so I like the different looks on it, and it takes very good photos. The problem with it is twofold. Number one, it does not take very good video at all. Like, video is very clearly an afterthought on this camera. It tops out at 1080. So like, I kind of want something that's at least capable of taking some pretty high quality video. And it's really not. There's effectively no stabilization. The autofocus just doesn't really work for anything that's moving. And as I said, 1080p. So that's not great. The other thing about it that I don't love is that it is not weather sealed. And this isn't like a huge deal to me most of the time, but the combination of the fact that it's not weather sealed and it has a lens that goes in and out of the camera body when you turn it on, that seems to make these cameras really prone to sucking dust in and getting dust on the sensor. Dust on the sensor on like a mirrorless camera like this Fuji is not a big deal. You take the lens off and you clean the sensor. But since the Ricoh is not made to have the lens removed at all, you can't remove the lens. It's a motorized mechanism that tucks it in and out of the body. You've got to take the whole camera apart. So really the way to clean this sensor is to give Ricoh like $100 and something and send it to them and not have a camera for a few weeks. Now, maybe I'm just extra paranoid about that. Like, maybe this is more a me problem than a camera problem, but it definitely seems like fairly widespread. Like, people on Reddit and people on DP Review and stuff like that, you can find tons of people who are complaining about getting dust on their sensor and having to send it in to be cleaned. As a result, I put this little lens cap on it. It's a JJC lens cap. I found it on Amazon. It's like $15 or so. That's cool, and that seems to be doing a good job of keeping dust out of the lens and off the sensor. But then the problem with that is that makes it kind of slower to deploy. Like now, if I want to take a picture with it, I got to get it out. I got to take the lens cap off. I got to find somewhere to put it because I don't want to just shove it in my pocket with lint and dust and then put it back on the camera, because that seems like it'd defeat the purpose of using a lens cover in the first damn place. So like that kind of annoys me and, triggers my paranoia. So those are kind of my issues with the Ricoh. It's about the best I've found for stills in that size so far. So like it's still good, but I would appreciate some kind of weather sealing, or at least is less prone to dust on the sensor. And also some video features would be fantastic. Prior to that, I had the Sony ZV-1, which I bought to do video with because it's a very video forward camera. It's got a 1-inch sensor, which is significantly smaller than an APS-C sensor, but it still took really good photos and video. My problem with that is, as I've moved away from kind of wanting to do that much video on this, like I want my everyday carry camera to be primarily a stills camera, but also capable, like if I go, like when I went to New Orleans, there was a street band playing, and I just had the Ricoh with me, and I did not get any good video from it. I got some cool stills, but no video. I want it to be capable of doing, more like a hybrid system, capable of good video, but a stills first camera. And the ZV-1 was definitely not a stills first camera. It was a video first camera, which in all fairness is exactly as it is advertised. Like I should have been surprised by this, but the way I used a carry camera started to change, and so I don't like the controls at all for stills, basically. The camera I had before that was very similar. I kind of grouped these together on my website when I wrote this article. It was the Sony RX100 It was basically the same body as the ZV-1 with also the 20.1 megapixel 1-inch sensor. And it is very much a photography forward controls camera. So that was fantastic. The thing I didn't like about it is for the 7, I believe the 6 as well, the RX100 line used to have basically like 24-70. I probably should have looked this up before I started this video, but it was something like that. It didn't have a huge amount of zoom, but it was an f1.8 lens, which that with a 1-inch sensor made it pretty decent in like indoors low light scenarios. But when they went to the 6 and the 7, they decided the RX100 should be a super zoom. So they changed it from like a 24-70 to like a 24-200 lens. But of course they couldn't make that f1.8 at the widest end. They had to make it f2.8. So the combination of f2.8 and a relatively small sensor made it to where it wasn't the best at indoor photography. Outside, it looked fantastic, and the zoom was useful at times, but I really want one of the newer, like a newer RX100 that goes back to the old lens. Now, of course, I could go back to the old RX100. It's got the f1.8 lens instead of the zoom, but the problem is it doesn't have the newer Sony autofocus, which is to me like the whole point to getting a Sony camera, is their autofocus is so good and their tracking and stuff. Well, the RX100 7 came out in 2019. So if I go back to like the 5 or the 5A, that's going to be a camera from like 2016, 2017. Like I don't really want something that old. And the other thing too, with the RX100, even the 7, which is still the newest one, even though it's 4 years old, because it's 4 years old, it has a freaking micro SD port on it. I cannot in 2023 justify buying a $1,200 pocket camera with a micro SD port. I just can't do it. I just can't. I'm not going to. I'm not carrying a micro SD cable with me. And you don't want to have to carry a battery charger around with your like everyday carry camera. You want it to be something that you can plug in when you're in the car between places or something and top it off, You don't have to carry spare batteries and a battery charger and stuff. Like, that's crazy. So the other contender And what I would kind of like to have is the Fuji X100V. But there's a reason that I would just like to have it. It's basically impossible to buy. It seems to check every box. Number one, I already shoot Fuji cameras, so I could use the same film simulation on my mirrorless camera as on my EDC camera, and all my pictures would look the same, or I'd have the options of the same film simulations. It has a faster lens than the Ricoh at f2.0, and it has the same size APS-C sensor. These are all fantastic things. Sounds great, right? But yeah, it's impossible to buy. I signed up for B&H's alert if stock became available before I bought the Ricoh. I'm recording this video in almost September 24th of 2023. I bought the Ricoh in December of 2022. I've had a stock alert set up on both B&H, Adorama, all those places since late 2022, probably October or November of 2022. There has never been a time at which the X100V is in stock. The only way to purchase it right now is either secondhand, know somebody that's selling one, which they'll probably want a lot of money unless you get very lucky, or you can buy it from basically a scalper. Current scalper prices on Amazon are $2,500. $2,500. That's 2 XS20 bodies. I'm not doing that. These are things I'm not doing. I'm not paying $2,500 for a pocket camera, unless it's like a Leica. I'm not buying a camera in 2023 with a micro SD port. So those two things are I'm just not doing it. Now, Fuji is rumored to be updating the X100V at some point early next year. Honestly, it looks pretty good on paper as is. I would imagine they're going to probably give it the newer processing and autofocus from the, X Process 5 that this camera has, the XS20. That would be fantastic. But the main thing is, they've got to make enough of them so that I can actually purchase one. That's going to be a big contributing factor in me buying one, is can I actually buy the thing? So that's the other thing I want. I'd really like some amalgamation of all of these. Any one of these, Fuji could just make their camera available, and that seems like it would make it pretty close to perfect, probably worth the trade-offs. It's definitely bigger than the other cameras, but it does have an optical viewfinder, or EVF. So that, to me, I would actually deal with the extra size. Sony could update the RX100. Honestly, if they just put a micro or a USB Type-C port on it, I would strongly consider just buying another RX107 with a USB-C port. If they really want to compete in this space, they could use the RX100 body and put an APS-C sensor on it. I would be all over that because Sony's autofocus would be awesome. So that's something that I would buy. Ricoh could do a better job of weather sealing, maybe at least add 4K 30 video. That would be fantastic. So any of them could make something that's awesome. But there's also the sleeper case. The iPhone 15 Pro just came out. I just received this 2 days ago. It's natural titanium, which is another shade of silver so far as I can tell. But this year, almost all of the camera improvements, I think basically all of the camera improvements on the Pro, because I didn't get a Pro Max because I don't like carrying a surfboard around in my pocket, but they're all software. But one of the things that they're doing is they seem to be doing, how they do basically exposure bracketing to do their HDR thing where they take multiple pictures. When you press the shutter button, it's not just taking one picture, it's taking multiple pictures at different exposure levels, one to get the highlights and one that's overexposed to get shadow detail, and it stacks them together in one picture where theoretically everything is exposed correctly. This year they seem to be doing that also for resolution, because the iPhone 15 Pro has a 48 megapixel sensor, but it uses pixel binning to make a 12 megapixel photo, or at least that's what it did last year. This year, it looks like what they're doing is taking some 12 megapixel pixel binned photos for the exposure, and then taking some 48 megapixel full readout pictures for detail, and combining them and spitting out a 24 megapixel photo in the end. Is that good enough to where it's finally at the point where it could compete with like these pocket cameras like the RX100. In some ways it seems like Sony thinks so because they haven't updated it since 2019. I think they feel like most people are just using their cell phone for like, you know, point and shoot carry camera kind of action. So I'm going to check out, while I'm waiting for anyone to make something else that I might be interested in, I'm going to put the 15 Pro through its paces and see, do you actually see that higher resolution? Is it good enough now that you would want to use this and not carry another camera and only like bring out the mirrorless camera when you're really going to shoot photos or really making a video? So I'm going to go do that. That'll be my next video. So if you want to see how that goes, hit the subscribe button. And I will see you next time when I have more camera thoughts that I have to get out of my brain. Bye. This is the 15 Pro front camera, which I don't expect to be all that fantastic. But I did forget to add that when you're watching this video, you may want to click on the link in the description that goes to my website because it shows all of these pictures from all of these different cameras. And it the gallery plugin I'm using on my website actually shows like which camera, which focal length, like aperture, stuff like that. It shows a bunch of information about the photo so you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Later. Micro USB port.